Have you ever pondered why the Titanic, the ship touted as unsinkable, met such a tragic end? An unthinkable question, isn't it? After all, the Titanic was not just any ship. It was a symbol of human achievement, a marvel of engineering, a floating palace that promised luxury and safety. Before its maiden voyage, the Titanic was hailed as the pinnacle of shipbuilding. It was the largest, most luxurious liner of its time, and it was believed to be virtually unsinkable. But the unthinkable happened. The Titanic on its maiden voyage struck an iceberg and sank, taking with it over 1,000 lives. This shocking event shook the world, raising questions that have intrigued historians and enthusiasts for more than a century. Why did the Titanic sink? What factors led to this disastrous event? Are there lessons we can learn from this tragedy? Let's dive into the history and unravel the mystery of the Titanic. The Titanic embarked on its maiden voyage from Southampton, England, on April 10, 1912. This awe-inspiring behemoth of a ship, over 880 feet long, was the epitome of luxury and engineering prowess. It boasted an array of extravagant features that were designed to impress and provide comfort for its over 2,000 passengers. The ship was a floating palace, complete with sumptuous suites, a grand staircase, and opulent dining rooms. It had a gymnasium, a swimming pool, and even a Turkish bath. For entertainment, there was a fully stocked library, a music room, and a spacious promenade deck for leisurely strolls. The passengers on board were a diverse mix, ranging from the wealthiest elite to those seeking a new life in America. Among the passengers were prominent figures such as the American socialite Molly Brown, industrialist Benjamin Guggenheim, and British aristocrat Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon. The high hopes for this maiden voyage were palpable. The Titanic was touted as the ship of dreams, a marvel of modern engineering that was unsinkable. The journey was to take them from Southampton, with stops at Cherbourg, France and Queenstown, Ireland, before heading across the Atlantic to New York City. As the ship sailed, the passengers reveled in the opulence, the lavish meals, and the promise of a speedy crossing. The Titanic was making good time, gliding smoothly through the calm waters under clear skies. The ship was living up to its hype, and the passengers and crew were blissfully unaware of the looming danger. The timeline leading up to the iceberg collision began to unfold. On the night of April 14th, 4 days into the voyage, the Titanic received several iceberg warnings from other ships, but unfortunately, these warnings were not heeded with the gravity they warranted. As the night wore on, the atmosphere on the ship remained festive and carefree, but beneath the merriment and the splendor, the Titanic was steaming ahead, full speed into a field of icebergs. Little did they know, their journey was about to take a dramatic and tragic turn. On the night of April 14th, just 4 days into the voyage, the Titanic struck an iceberg. This collision would mark the beginning of one of the most tragic maritime disasters in history. Now, let's delve into the circumstances of that fateful collision. The Titanic was sailing in the North Atlantic, an area known for its treacherous icebergs. The weather conditions that night were less than favorable. A moonless night coupled with calm, flat water made the detection of icebergs extremely challenging. Icebergs, often referred to as white wolves of the sea, are more visible with rougher seas, as the waves crashing against them create a white foam that stands out in the darkness. Unfortunately, the sea was like a mirror that night, offering no such warning sign. Earlier that day, the Titanic had received multiple iceberg warnings from other ships. However, these warnings were not given the gravity they merited. The Titanic was considered unsinkable, a belief that fostered a dangerous sense of invincibility. Furthermore, the ship was maintaining a high speed, despite the warnings and the known risks of ice in the area. The crew's faith in the ship's advanced technological design, along with the pressure to maintain the scheduled arrival time in New York, led to a dismissal of the potential danger. As the enormous iceberg loomed ahead, the crew finally realized the imminent danger. Immediate actions were taken to try and avert the disaster. The engines were reversed and the ship was steered in an attempt to avoid a direct hit. However, the Titanic, with its colossal size and significant momentum, was not as responsive or agile as needed for such a drastic maneuver. The Titanic did manage to avoid a head-on collision, but the iceberg scraped along the ship's starboard side, piercing the hull below the waterline. This caused 5 of the ship's 16 watertight compartments to flood. The ship, designed to stay afloat with only 4 compartments flooded, was now doomed. Despite the crew's efforts, the collision with the iceberg was unavoidable. The Titanic, the ship of dreams, had met its iceberg, and the nightmare was only just beginning. The unsinkable Titanic was now in grave danger. The iceberg had scraped the ship's starboard side, causing damage that was catastrophic yet almost invisible to the naked eye. What seemed like minor scrapes were, in reality, long gashes that extended below the waterline. The ship's watertight compartments, designed to keep the vessel afloat even in dire circumstances, were compromised. The Titanic was designed to stay afloat with 4 of its compartments flooded, but the iceberg had breached 5, maybe even 6 of them. The ship was taking on water fast, and the pumps on board, though working at full capacity, were not designed to handle such a volume. The math was simple, yet chilling. The unsinkable ship was going to sink. As the realization dawned on the crew and passengers, panic ensued. People rushed to the lifeboats only to find there were not enough. The Titanic, in all its grandeur, was equipped with only 20 lifeboats, enough for barely half of the over 2,000 people on board. The "women and children first" protocol added to the chaos, as men were left behind, and many lifeboats were launched half-empty, due to confusion and panic. In the midst of the chaos, the ship's orchestra played on, their music a haunting melody against the backdrop of impending doom. The ship, once a symbol of human ingenuity and luxury, was now a scene of desperation and horror. The panic, the chaos, the fear, all played out in the frigid North Atlantic night. As the stern rose higher, the lights flickered and then went out, plunging the Titanic into darkness. The ship broke apart, the stern sinking back and the bow going under. The unsinkable Titanic, the pride of the White Star Line, the marvel of the Edwardian era, was defeated by an iceberg and human arrogance. In the early hours of April 15th, the Titanic succumbed to the sea. The ship that was said to be unsinkable was now at the bottom of the Atlantic, leaving behind a legacy of hubris, tragedy, and lessons learned the hard way. The sinking of the Titanic was one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in history. As we look into the aftermath of this immense tragedy, we realize its profound impact, not just on the survivors, but on the entire world. Following the sinking, the world was gripped by a wave of shock and sorrow. Over 1,500 lives were lost to the icy depths of the Atlantic that fateful night. Only around 700 individuals, a mix of passengers and crew, survived, forever scarred by the memories of the disaster. News of the Titanic's demise spread rapidly across the globe, causing widespread public outrage. People were aghast at the sheer scale of the tragedy. Many questioned how such a disaster could occur, especially on a ship hailed as the epitome of luxury and safety. The public demanded answers, and this led to a series of investigations. 2 major inquiries were launched, one by the United States Senate and the other by the British Board of Trade. While these investigations led to some conflicting conclusions, they both agreed on one thing. There had been a catastrophic failure in the ship's safety measures. The lack of lifeboats, the ship's high speed despite iceberg warnings, and the ineffective communication of danger to the passengers were all highlighted as critical factors contributing to the disaster. The aftermath of the Titanic sinking also saw a significant shift in maritime safety regulations. The tragedy served as a wake-up call, leading to the formation of the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, held in 1914. This convention introduced a host of new safety regulations, including mandatory lifeboat drills, sufficient lifeboats for all passengers, and around-the-clock radio communications on passenger ships. In the years that followed, the Titanic became a symbol of human hubris, a stark reminder of the perils of overconfidence in technology. It served as a poignant lesson that, no matter how advanced we become, we remain at the mercy of nature's whims. The Titanic's story continues to captivate us, more than a century after its sinking. It's a tale of human ambition, technological prowess, and ultimately, a tragic miscalculation. The ship that was deemed unsinkable now rests 2.5 miles beneath the ocean surface, a silent testament to one of the most dramatic chapters in maritime history. Though the Titanic was deemed unsinkable, a series of unfortunate events led to its tragic end. A stark reminder that even the greatest creations of man are not immune to nature's unpredictability. As we conclude our exploration of the Titanic's story, let us never forget the lessons it has taught us.